Good evening, welcome, namaskar. It's a pleasure to invite and welcome all of you to yet another conversation from Humanity 2.0 series. It's our pleasure this evening to have, already looking forward to very interesting conversations. And I believe that this will be an hour that each of us who's going to be a part of it will enjoy more than more than you can even imagine. So, by way of an introduction to those of us who have been maybe who are attending this session for the first time, let me just tell you a little bit about Humanity 2.0 and how this came about and what we hope to achieve through these conversations. Humanity 2.0 was envisaged in 2010 as an event which would actually be an online event, spotlighting authors, artists, thought leaders, and practitioners in these one on one conversations, which would explore and articulate issues and actually influence public discourse. The idea, of course, was to facilitate a point of confluence and a dialogue for anyone who has perspectives or experiences related to justice, or in fact, the lack of it in various aspects of our society today. These conversations, we, as this small team, hope would serve as prompts not just for dialogue, but concerted and definitive action. We continue to nurse the hope that every effort, however small, will trigger a dramatic impetus in the fight for a more just world. So, this initiative has built visibility and traction through engagements with several eminent personalities and from different walks of life. The most recent have been Bernard Kage, Chitrangada Mukherjee, and Dr. Ekta Chauhan. For today, this September edition of our Humanity 2.0 series, I'm so delighted to host this conversation with a very interesting writer who is a recipient of the Mirror Sahitya Award for Best Author in the Readers and Editors' Choice categories. Please help me welcome Shibu Kochery. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for making time to join us this evening.
Hi, good evening, Prashanti. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's going to be a very exciting conversation. I have your book here with me, and I have had a chance to go through it. And I would encourage those, of our audience members who have joined us already to pick up a copy and get into this very, very thrilling story that Shibu sir has written for us. So, as we start this conversation, sir, I just wanted to ask you, how did this book come about, and what were what were some of the personal experiences or observations that shaped its story? This book, which you have titled "Amongst the Believers."
Yeah, thank you, Prashanti, and thanking all the readers and viewers here. Yes, to start with, of course, this book has been a long time in the making. It's a sequel to my first novel. I have written my first debut novel. It's called Men and Dreams in the Dauladhar.
That's right. Yes.
Which is based on a hydroelectric project being built in the Himalayas, and it's a life about the project life, kind of an exclusive thing which you never get to read otherwise. Which is I was part of that, so I could write about it.
I see.
And
Okay.
and it's a kind of espionage which was built into the background of the novel. That's the first one. So
Right.
the second novel which I wrote was an out-and-out thriller called Faith and the Beloved, which is based on
Yes.
the LTT and its fallout and something of taking off from where the LTT left and how it has impacted our life, etc. The third book is a continuation, a sequel to my first book, but the effort has been a lot to bring in, or maybe in many ways, to educate the readers into some aspects of the terrorist life, or there's so much of terrorism and violence which goes on in our society and which is generally stereotyped.
Right.
So it's like almost you speak to the guys, you kind of stereotype a man, a community, or set of people, and without really knowing what is it that makes people do what they do,
Right.
and what are the kind of people who go into it, and what happens in that kind of life. It's again one of its kind of, it's a lot of research, a lot of work, And of course, by virtue of having been in the defense, there is a lot of things that by virtue of your background. It may not be anything to do with the current defense, but you know the domain to say that. So, finally, as to why people fight and how people fight, and that's the genesis of the whole thing. To give a perspective, the behavior of people is a reflection of the value system.
Yes.
And value system in our society, in our individuals, is normally comes from your society, your family, your education, your religion, and some after that your friends and the kind of company you keep. But mostly this family, education, religion, and society. These four in our society. That's how it has been. And more or less, it is similar all over the world. The degree will vary, how much of each influence a person on the individual.
Right.
Now, let's say, it's a religion, the organized religion, as we call it, is a belief system.
Right.
Correct. People believe, and you're told that this is how it is. You believe, and you believe, and you move forward. It's a belief system. Now, if you challenge the belief, then it becomes difficult. So therein comes a lot of challenges to say that, when you talk about things after your life, they say there's a heaven. There's a concept of a heaven, what you call if you talk about a Hindu heaven, you will have, the level 1, level 2, level 3, up to 7 heavens are there, depending on your karma, depending on which one you'll end up in. And there is a description on what is there in each heaven, etc. If you go to a Christian heaven, there is a promise of something else, angels and, some bearded men, and, there's another kind of heaven. If you talk about an Islamic heaven, he tells you about, 72 houris and having, sex in the afterlife. It's one way of presentation. Now, who's to know what is right, what is wrong? Nobody has, gone that side and come back and tell you, no, this is not right, that is what it is right. It's all imagination of people and how it has been built up. So when belief systems clash, you have problems. And if it is abused, you have bigger problems. So I do not know, many of the audience may have heard this. It's a very popular saying among the discerning readers to say, that cataract is the third most cost of blindness.
Yes.
And the first two are religion and politics, not necessarily in that order.
Right.
And you mix the two, it's a deadly cocktail. So one of the efforts has been in this, has been to highlight it is not to be opinionated, but I felt that there was a need. There was so much of this violence going on. If you see that when I started writing this novel, the Ukraine war had just started.
Right.
And it's still going on. 3.5 years down the line, 1 million people, war casualties on either side. It's still going on. And with more technology, more education, instead of us living maybe in a better world, we seem to turn more and more violent. So this book has been, and in many ways, to give the readers. See, normally what happens is when you see the mass media, or you tell, in India, the main media has become like Doordarshan, version 1, 2, version 3, version 4, and it's like, see Doordarshan and you've seen it all. It's only the same thing paraphrased, you'll see in the rest of the mainstream media. It's a passing phase. I presume that'll change, and sometime, again, they'll get their backbone back at some stage as we move forward. Right. But that aside, you are given a perspective. It's become point of view history, point of view events. Everything is point of view based. So if you bring in 2 points of view, truth lies somewhere in between. Now it is for the reader now to read a newspaper, read a counter newspaper, and try to figure out, go to social media and figure out where the truth lies. The truth is lost in between.
Right.
This was an effort. This book is deliberately an effort to bring in a lot of aspects which are unpleasant, very unpleasant. I also felt very bad some of the aspects when you write about it.
Right.
When you say about abuse of women, sexual violence, the using women as pawns, and the amount of violence that goes on in the name of terrorism. And then if you mix up terrorism with politics and, politically funded terrorism, there's so much of thing which happen. And my effort has been to bring a kind of glimpse for the readers, those who are okay reading this kind of stuff. Not everybody will like it.
Right.
Most of the Indian readers who are the drawing room readers who do not like to step out of the comforts of the drawing room, some of them may find it quite disturbing to know that the word is so bad out there. So in many ways, it was an effort to sell. This is an area which not easy to narrate because not many people have the expertise to narrate.
Right.
Not only the expertise, so you need background knowledge, and you would all these are not facts and figures. It's a fiction novel, but even then the background is realistic, and a lot of it is taken off from events which have taken place.
Correct. Yes. Yes, sir.
So you will be able to relate and relate quite accurately to what happens, or this is the way things happen. And it's a way of exploring people and, kind of exposing people, kind of sensitizing people to this aspect of life. You need to understand this as to how people can be brainwashed to become terrorists, how people can be brainwashed to do a lot of things which you will not do in your normal walk of life, where people think that, let's say, what do you call it? Dying to win, it's called. You say that if you cannot win another race, kill yourself. You think that's one way of victory and blow up another 20, 30 people along with it. So you think you're one. Who knows? So these are all a lot of the things. The idea has been to sensitize the readers to a very difficult topic. It's not pleasant. It was not easy writing.
Absolutely.
It was not easy writing, and a lot of research that goes into it. And you have to be careful that that I also do not end up doing a point of view narration. Then you have failed as an author. Because if
Right.
you're seen as an author who's just writing to again promote a point of view, then of course that would be a failure. I have not done that. And I've had many readers who thought, they thought it was another stereotype book. But okay, happily they said they changed their mind after reading it. They said, yeah, okay, you've been quite blunt about things, unpleasant, but okay, this is things as they exist.
I agree. You've actually highlighted quite a few of the things that I wanted to say in your introduction itself, sir. The fact that number one, it was a very difficult book to read as well. Number two, I think I also mentioned to you that this may not be, the genre of books that I would have probably picked up by myself to read. Number three, you also spoke about how most of us would perhaps have a perspective, but to be able to understand where you're writing from and the amount of research that has gone into actually making this novel, I think is commendable, sir, because, my next question actually was how much of this novel is actually rooted in lived realities you've seen around you, and how much is your creative interpretation? But of course, you've almost answered that by saying that this is a fictional novel, but it's based on a lot of research and the fact that you've read and understood situations quite widely. So yes, you have you've explained that. But tell me, sir, what for you was the biggest challenge in telling the story? Was it about representing truth or balancing it with fiction?
Yes, actually, it is a challenge. It is a challenge because you see, a lot of the times, like for example, a lot of things which have been, kind of deduced in the background of this novel. So let's say, for example, some of it is based on true events. Let's say there's an actual event. There was a case of, let's say, the Mossad doing a hit in Dubai. They, assassinated one of the terrorists who had come to Dubai, and they had assembled a team of 4 5 people, and they'd assassinated and got out. Now the ISI put together based on the videos from various hotels that who are these people, how they got together, and proved it to the Dubai police that see, boss, this is how it was done. These are the guys. These are the people who came. So then there was a lot of hue and cry because they had used some British passports. Britishers object to saying that, and but it died because the people are already carried out assassination and vanished. So what came out is that that what came out very clearly at that time that ISI had the capability to decipher or decode a Mossad operation.
Right.
Okay, now this is an event which was reported in the media, and it also says how it is done. Now you develop from there to say that okay, this is one truth. So let's say another event has happened. How could it have happened?
Right.
So a lot of the time, so you know that this is one it was done. So how will the Israelis do it? How will the Mossad do it? How will the ISI counter it? A lot of thinking goes into it, and then you temper your experience and your the creative thinking into it. Not easy, not easy. And as a matter of fact, that's a challenge and that's a fun.
Correct.
That's a
Yes,
challenge
sir.
and that's a fun.
Yes, and I mean, I'm in the during the course of the conversation, I'm not going into the actual the characters or looking at the story itself because I mean, I'm not going to assume that those who are joining us have read the book already. However, there are a lot of themes that I'm going to be discussing with you because I think what you've done is highlight certain things which we would actually feel more comfortable not talking about or not having conversations about them or even um, sweeping them under the carpet, if that is, if that's a way of looking at it, because these are very uncomfortable, themes and topics that you have actually highlighted in the book. So your novel explores the the complexity of cultural and religious identities. So, how do you see identity shaping people's sense of belonging, or the flip side, the exclusion in our country today, in contemporary India?
See, there's some of these aspects you need to understand that, like, for example, in India, I think we live about, we have, each religion has got in its own way many sub communities. So, for example, Hinduism itself is not, everyone is not just a Hindu that you all, live together. So, you'll say Jains will be one community, your Jats will be another, or, Agarwals will be another, or, Kayasthas will be another. There are, same thing with the Muslims. There are, Shias, Sunnis, Ahmadis, it goes sections and sections. And India actually lives in about 4,500 communities.
Right.
Actually living, when you live in that community, you may be a Muslim, but you will be part of that, maybe an Ahmadiyya, maybe a Shia, maybe a Sunni, maybe whatever the subsect you're part of. If there is a subsect in that, same thing goes with the
Yes.
Hindus, and so same thing with the Christians, to whatever extent, whichever sect you belong in. So, second part is I will ask you a counter question to say that, I remember this talking to somebody now from the Hindi heartland. So I told him, I narrated him the story about Ekalavy's story on some conversation, saying, that Ekalavy's thumb was cut by Acharya Drona. So he says, Sab, I know, tab se. He said, from that time onwards, from Mahabharata time onwards, Dalits have been discriminated. He could only think of that. He says, no, there is no doubt in my mind. That was a deliberate effort. He did not want a Dalit warrior to come up to challenge the supremacy of the upper caste. Now, that's how he sees it. So then I asked him, that then why is it like this? So then he says, what can I do? He says, go to police thana first, is a jaat pucho, fir baat pucho. Because the system, what he says is that in our society, as of today, the law and order machinery and the governance is not fair and uniform. So any individual, when he runs into trouble, his support system is not your legal system. It's always back to the community.
Right.
Correct. And it's unfortunately, excepting maybe in the urban areas, it is a little different. But I'm telling urban areas means I'm talking about, the major cities. But the tier 2 cities and below, it is still driven by this sense where something goes wrong, your backup system, if your community doesn't back you up, you're finished.
Correct.
Correct. So because of that, there is a sense of belonging which is forced on you. Now, it doesn't matter which community, which religion, which caste, which you come from. Everyone has to have a social security net of your community to back you up.
Right.
Now, this may come as a little strange. Now, here what we are saying is, that let's say the minority tag and whatever that partition and carrying forward of the partition, and let's say that's why I said, when you politicize religion, then your logic and reasoning goes out through the window.
Absolutely.
So then what you're seeing is, again, I said, it's a point of view, way of conflict. So someone tells you, what is the population of India in 1940, at the time of partition? It says 35 crores. All right. What's the population now? 140 crores. What is the population of Muslims in 1947? It is now it is 6 times. So the nation has gone 4 times. Muslims have grown 6 times. So I told him, boss, Pakistan is that only Muslims. They also gone only 6 times. It is not only here. So why you would see what is that an issue for you? Is this no? Is it deliberate? No, these are all things which you cannot, argue or make sense into people with. So the thing is that if you create a divide, that means if you create a social divide, that plays into your normal walk of life. It plays everywhere.
Right.
So that is the thing. So like if you see that if you have to backstage, and say everyone is allowed to have his religion, but please keep your religion at home. Your personal beliefs and practices should be at home. It should not be born on your forehead and walk around with it and then make that an issue. The reason is basically because when you're a poor nation, when governance is not delivering, you're not able to justify to people about Bijli Sadak Pani and about the aspirations of people, jobs and social security. Then it's much easier to play on this.
Right.
Much easier because it's far tougher for the government. If we are claimed to be a 4 trillion economy. For our population, we have to be double digit to actually make the welfare reach everyone.
Absolutely.
Correct. Now, India as a nation, for some of the readers may not know, we were not a poor nation always. Now, if you look back at nations and the wealth of nations, if you go back to the Mughal time, we were number two after China in the richest nations in the world. We are. That's why. Why do you think everyone used to raid India? Because we had so much of wealth.
Right.
No one who came here wanted to run away from here. It's only the Brits. I mean, I wish they had bloody stayed here because they stayed here. Maybe we wouldn't have lost so much. Because
Okay.
seriously, because see, if you look at this, anybody this came, whether it is your Khiljis or the Mughals who came and stayed here, they generated wealth here and it was kept here. They're not taking it and running away anywhere.
Right.
So in the case of Britishers, it's something like just imagine today if you're paying 18% GST and the central government instead of giving it to the people and taking it and setting it in the UK, what will happen to the country? And that's what happened to us for 200 years. So we have a lot of challenges in our social living.
Right.
The one fact is that we live in communities and not just one or two or three. It's about actually practical. It comes out I think 4,800. I forget the exact number, but our life in the country is decided by about 6 lakh villages, 6.5 lakh if I remember villages, and this 4,500 communities. This is the actual figure that decides how a society behaves. And for all of them across the board, everyone has to have a social security network which is backed by his community, whichever
Right.
it is from. So yes, if you say it's a good thing, I don't know because when I speak to people, they say that what do I do? If you do not trust the law and order, if you do not trust the police is not fair in their dealings or they're politically biased, then unless you have a support system, you will not survive. So then this will stay. So it will change. It will also change basically with education and with prosperity. Two things which we need to bring into our country.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Education. I mean, I have always strongly believed that education is a game changer, and the fact that we still have places and communities which lack our, access to education, especially even for their girl child, for example, girl children. I think we are not able to take that step forward because of the lack of access to education. And so you're right in saying that, sir. Um, I also wanted to just say that the title that you've chosen for your book, Amongst the Believers. I mean, when I first saw it, I was wondering what kind of a book it was going to be because when you use the word believers, it sounds like a religious term. But of course, now language has been, we've been able to use language in a much larger way, and believers could mean so many things. So your title, Amongst the Believers, itself suggests being inside and outside at the same time, you know. So how do you interpret this tension of belonging for individuals from minority communities?
See, this is actually something which let's put it this way. I'll ask the counter question to this.
Okay.
So that counter question to this is that what comes first? Let's say that your religious belief and your compliance to religion beliefs come first, or the nation should come first. Should the law of the land come first, or your religion should come first? That's the first question that you need to address. Because if you say you live in a democracy, but I will not follow the rules of the democracy, I want to have my own set of rules which is dictated by my religion, it becomes difficult. It
Right.
is socially living together becomes difficult. That's a practical side. So let's say, let's say that if let's say you talk about marriages, let's say that my religion allows me to marry 100 times, or I'm allowed to marry 100 wives. But if the law of the land says, let's say for example in America, it's a rule which says that you're allowed to marry once across the board. Doesn't matter which religion you're from, you're allowed to marry once. There people don't have any problem. So if the law of the land, because why I'm saying this, I remember way back, about 15 years back, I was speaking to one of my a friend of mine, a Muslim chap, an engineer, a businessman, he was a well-to-do guy. In this casual conversations, he was mentioning that he was married and he's got 2 children, he's planning to marry again. So then I asked him why. He said, I'm allowed. The law of the land permits, my religion permits. What's the problem? I can afford it. And he says, in any case, after 7 years, one more wife, it brings, some interest in my life. So and he just went on to say, of course, jokingly, I have no way of knowing whether he actually went on to marry or not. I have not kept track of him either. But what he was saying is one small point. What he was saying is that his religion allows him to marry 4 times, and the law of the land permits it.
Right.
So, and he only told me this, that, if it was states, I couldn't do it because they don't allow it. So
Right.
here he says, I am allowed. So what's your problem? He says, I am allowed. Says, it's a privilege of being here. Says, I don't drink, I don't gamble, I have no other vices. Says, I'm a God-fearing man. I work hard, I've made money. So this is my way of, taking what I'm entitled to. Now, I don't have any answer for this kind of things. It's an individual's point of view. It may not be the view of the majority. It may
Right.
not even be a reflection of the cross section. It may not be, because he's affluent, he's rich. He can afford to give 40 wives also. He's that kind of money. But it's about what he's selling is a very small thing, that his religion allows 4, I will have 4. The law of the land allows 4, I'll have 4. So now here comes a question. That's what a lot of the talk that is going on about now, that on clash between when you have your let's say the religious freedom versus your whatever your democratic norms or whatever the law of the land says. So to give a, let's say, different aspect to this, to say that you cannot say that that you will only accept things which suit your belief system. So that's what I said. No, that's what I said. Now, if you believe a belief system, if it is followed blindly, it can be dangerous, and it is dangerous, always dangerous. Now, let's say, for example, I'll give another side, the concept of madrasas. Okay, at the time of partition, some of the best, schools, colleges, education were known by madrasas.
Right.
Okay, so some of the, if you talk the pre-independence time, some of the best educated guys in the country went to some of the famous madrasas. Even when education was not extended to the whole world, madrasa was a place where, okay, not education, at least they could learn to read and write. It was a revolutionary step to think that, 1500 years back, somebody thought of this. When did we start education to people in India? When did we open to the people? If you leave the Brahmins and, the Banyas, or the privileged class, if you leave the privileged class aside, to the masses, when did we actually open up education? So that was a fantastic concept when it started. Now, if you abuse the same thing and you say that in terms of education, it becomes, what do you call that, brainwashing, then it defeats the purpose. Now
Right.
it has become a, derogatory word to say that you studied in a, the madrasa. No, if you look at the extent of logic, how is any missionary school or any Christian school any different from a madrasa in that sense?
And yes, yes, please
In that
continue.
sense, but of course, you hear people, because their Christian educations have done well, so people are happy going to Christian education because fees is less and they teach you well and you do well, so it's okay, and they're not into it they're not been abusing the system for personal gains. So these are things which, when you look at it, that's why I said, no, it is not only about the majority and minority. It's about how do we develop our society to live together, and what are the social norms.
Yes. And I think that's what you've attempted to do in your book. And maybe, for those of our viewers who have joined us right now, we have actually reached the halfway point of our conversation. And we've been in conversation with Shibu Kochery, whose book, Amongst the Believers, is what we're discussing today. And I would encourage you to pick up a copy and actually read, primarily because I think this is a window to a point of view or perspective that is not easily available, is not readily out there for people to maybe understand. And I think Shibu sir has done an excellent job of actually balancing the background with fiction, but then giving you a window into a different world altogether, which is so relevant in today's context. So continuing, sir, continuing with the conversation we've been having, do you think literature can create safe spaces for people to explore their layered identities in ways public discourse often cannot? Do you think literature can create safe spaces?
Of course, traditionally it has been and will continue to be. Because one of the things is, about literature. One of the things is that first it is uh, read by people who can read. So, so the start point is that there are people who are capable of reading. Now the challenge, of course, with that reading crowd, you never have a problem.
Right.
The problem comes with the one guy who reads, takes out one line out of context and goes and sends it to another 100 guys who don't read, but they only hear that one sentence. And the template, that one sentence has the whole truth about the book or what is written. So otherwise, yes,
Right.
definitely. And literature has been, and today, now, of course, the traditional impact of literature or direct reading has reduced substantially. With so many other options available to people,
Right. Yes.
the over the
Unfortunately.
top or the I don't know, call it unfortunate. It's a changing things, changing ways. So the difference between reading and viewing a movie or viewing a serial, etc., is like driving a car yourself and being a pillion rider. So watching anything that what you're watching someone has put up for you, it's like being a pillion rider, be it on a scooter, cycle, or a car. Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
You have no control over it. Somebody is taking you for a ride, and
And
you're
you're
sitting
holding
behind
on
and
that time.
enjoying the scenery.
Yeah.
Now the book is different because
Yes.
when you read a book, there are 100 readers who read the same novel, and they will have 100 different perspectives, a way of looking at it, understanding it, empathizing with it, far, far, far more than a presentation of, let's say, the media. Multimedia is much more powerful. I don't deny that.
But I think,
Visual representation.
yes, sir.
But for the discerning reader, the discernment is much lesser. That's all.
What you did mention, the fact that when we're reading a book, each of us brings ourselves to it as well, right? I mean, we bring our own, backgrounds, our worldviews, our contexts while we're reading something. So there is a very personal interaction that happens when we're reading a book, and maybe that's why, when you mentioned that other forms of media today are more like pillion riders, or sitting shotgun, being driven. So you're just going where somebody's taking you. Rather than actually interacting with the whole experience of reading. So at this point, sir, there are a couple of questions, and um, yes, there are a couple of questions from our viewers. Could I just ask them right now?
Oh, sure, sure. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Yes. So there's a question about your book, and it's by Evangel Matcha, where the question is: were there book reviews you have published, and what have some of the responses been to your book amongst the believers?
There are, of course, the book is on Amazon. So there are, I think, 350 odd reviews are there. So you can go check the book on Amazon and you can see the reviews.
Right.
So there have been, I always say, that, you love my book, hate my book, but don't ignore my book. That's all I say. I have nothing against criticism. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
So there are readers who have said, that things which I have mentioned, that, it's stereotyping, that you're stereotyping the Muslims as terrorists. You're stereotyping women as objects of sexual slavery. You're promoting violence, or, you know, writing things which are difficult to read or may not be suitable for all readers. Those aspects I accept, because accept to the point that that reader is allowed to express his or her view.
Right.
So equally, I've had some of the readers who told me before reading the book they thought there's going to be another stereotype book, and said they said,
Surprise.
yes, no, it has not been. It's not a stereotype book. It's a tough read, but those who are able to get through it will like it. Will like it because it's different. It's a way of presenting things. But a lot of unpleasantness, because when you get into, it's very easy when you talk in the language and say all is fair in love and war. But war is a very nasty business, and it really
Absolutely.
goes to the extremes.
Yes.
And
And
you do so many things which when people get to hear, you shudder at the
yes.
thought of what all things happen in the name of war. So the terrorism as an instrument of war, when it takes place, so they are getting killed themselves. They abuse women, they abuse small girls, brainwash small children. But then they have a reason, because they've been told that this is a cause. So one of the things is, to some of this point, is also for the parents, even for the people who look into this, to keep a discerning mind.
Right.
That do not let, like you said, no, do not let anybody take you for a ride. Please read, discern for yourself as to some of the issues you need to. That's also one of the ideas, because we do not teach philosophy in our schools. We do not teach philosophy to people to give you that, this, unless you have the discerning perspective, it's difficult. Today, if I read newspapers, I have to read at least two of them, one pro-government and one anti-government. Then you get two perspectives, and then you try to kind of figure out the truth for yourself.
Right.
Or all the mainstream medias, all of them have got one-sided. Previously, they all become what I call khawalis. They sing along.
The same
Whatever
side. Yes.
Doordarshan say, they sing along. But it was not so. It was not so bad previously. At least
Right.
one or two channels were there, would give you a counterpoint. But okay, now you have to go to YouTube channels and the whatever the independent news readers to get a perspective, and then you decide for yourself where the truth lies. So it has become that there's always the vulnerability of the mass media and the social media being overwhelmed or manipulated to get results and to influence people. So to that extent, yes, you need to be careful. So when I say reviews are there, majority are in favor. There are some very, very, very scathing reviews, but I leave it to that. I'd say it's for the reader who reads a book to write his or her opinion, and from my side, they're fully at liberty to write whatever they deem fit. But by and large, majority have been quite okay with the book.
Thank you.
Was
Thank you for
majority.
that question, sir. There's also another question from Ray, and it's about your writing process. How do you overcome a writer's block? And do you listen to music or need silence while writing? Or is there a writing corner you prefer?
All three actually, the answer is there, there itself. I haven't faced the writer's block because my thing is that, I started writing rather late in my life. Because I've been a passionate writer from my school days, but once I joined the defense setup, your writing was all about defense, so
Yes.
that is not something which will come into the open. So it's about how to kill people more efficiently, with less cost to the government, and that kind of stuff. It's just we
Wow.
would it's about what we say,
Okay,
bang for the
stuff.
buck. Is a lot of the terms which you hear, when you say bang for the buck, means what? That how I spend less of government's money and kill more people. That's what it means. So it's a field which, unless you're in that domain, it's not a pleasant field.
Right.
So a lot of things have written, tactics and whatever strategy and torpedoes and missiles. I'm sure they'll all be gathering dust in some corner somewhere in the classified files in the North Block or South Block. Okay. So I could start writing only after I left the defense. So my first book came out in 2010.
Okay.
When I started writing, it didn't come out. It was published in 2015. So I have a lot of stories to tell. So I'm still, what do you call, I have not faced the writer's block yet, because I've got so much to pending to be written, and it's all of them are lined up there.
That's excellent, sir. In fact,
that is one part. But otherwise, on a practical side, when you start writing, given one answer. One is to do something as intense away from what you're doing. When you start writing, I found it that writing is easy when I'm doing an intense job. So when you're in your hard days work, you come back. At the end of the day, you switch off everything and just get into writing. It's another world. So you take off the day's agonies out. Then you get into your world, and you're playing in your whatever world with your heroes and heroines, and they're jumping around all over the world. That's one way. So which means you have to get into another intense activity. Now, what that is, it could be a intense game of sport if you like playing. It not what I mean is an activity, not something like watching a movie and listening to music. That really will not give you that. Something which you do. Go for a walk physically, go for a jog physically, or get into some actual physical activity. Traveling somewhere and things like that. So that is one thing when you take off your mind and try to do something intense. Now, that intense means it cannot be just going for a walk. That may not be enough. Something which really shakes you up, that kind of stuff. That's one way. Second is, yes, writing comes with the time and discipline. Once research can go on. So a lot of the time goes into research, which you can go on do as you get time. But once you start writing a book, you do discipline, dedicate 2 or 3 hours every day, fix the time, fix the venue, sit down and write. Come hello, hi, what are you going to keep writing?
Right. It's the consistency and the discipline, like you mentioned, sir. Yes. So thank you for answering that too. There is another question from Kiran K, who says, hello, Sergi. You mentioned about LTTE and terrorism in one of your books. How do you go about sourcing this information before you publish it? And I think you all did mention that you have, information, or you have a of course you do research, but you also have background information which gives you a lot more perspective in being able to write about uh, topics like that.
See, that part I accept in the sense that, see, the facts and figures in the what I've used in my books, all three, are all open media research data, facts and figures. But interpretation, yes, that is where your background happens.
Right.
Because finally, you may give a set of events. Anyone who reads it will read it, but then depending on your background and depending on how much you know about the domain, your interpretations will vary substantially.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the things that it was something live when it was, that from the period of 80s to almost 3 decades when this went on, it was a live thing which was happening in our society daily on television, news media. It's all over the place. So material is available enough in the open domain. You don't have to really get into anything classified for it. But to give a perspective on how the LTT worked and how it was countered and which are the challenges faced, of course, if you have a background in that domain, it always helps. The rest, of course, is your imagination. It's not a documentary, and you're not publishing a, technical article. When you fiction means fiction, then it's the 96% has to be imagination. It's only
Right.
4% which can be your, the
Facts and
facts
figures.
and figures.
Yes.
Otherwise, then it will be of no use. Facts and figures are required. When you say that in 1993 someone went to Colombo and traveled from there to Trincomalee, you should be able to bring out what the state was at that point in time.
Yes.
That much research you have to do. And that'll take, even they may write a one page, but may take you 100 days to research that to get those details out. What happened, how the road was, how the planes were, what are security measures in place, how you travel, where you have to stop, how many checkpoints. So that takes time. That takes time.
Sure.
So that is what makes your book authentic. Otherwise, I mean, it's much easier to write love triangles. You don't have to get into all this. It's just.
Yes. Okay. So we've spoken about really the book and the themes that you've been highlighting in your book, and I just wanted to move into a slightly more reflective mode at this point, and ask you, like, while you were writing this novel, um, did you find yourself like wrestling with your own ideas of faith or justice or cultural belonging? Um,
You do quite a bit. Because what happens is that, I remember the first novel when I wrote, the editor, and an old lady, she used to literally take me to the cleaners, as I would say, but in a positive way, not in the negative sense.
mhm.
So I remember a sentence and I said, Shibu, no, don't write that. I said, why? That shows your personal bias. It is not your author, that's your personal bias speaking. So I didn't like that, she ticked me off like that. But okay, I accepted her because she was quite, good at what she does. So one of the first and the problems is that if your personal viewpoint and personal biases come into your writing, then of course it is very easily seen through. That's what I told you about.
In the beginning.
Then your novel becomes a point of view writing, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge.
Yes.
It is a challenge because you're writing about very strong, let's say,
Themes.
situations,
Yeah.
and the very, 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 very difficult situations. You talk about war-torn Afghanistan, where so many thousands of people have died.
Right.
So if you take a point of view and say that Americans are wrong, and make this book all about badgering the Americans, then your writing will get into what you call that point of view writing, and people say, okay, so here comes one more that anti-American bashing novel.
Right.
Or you take a stereotype and say, that okay, these terrorists are all evil, America is all right, these people are all wrong. Then that becomes another point of view writing. There are people who write like that. That American society, they believe that whatever they do is right. So whatever they write, you'll find them they are always in the right. And that's one of the challenges that the Western media is so nuanced in their thing that facts and figures will give it right, but interpretation will always be to their benefit. To the Western, what I call the collective West. So you'll always find that Americans, the Europeans, they're all good guys. So when you come to these fellows, but that's okay. So, but you have to be careful when you write, because
Writing.
we have a limitation that English is still a foreign language to me. It's not my mother tongue. However much I learn English, how much I write English, it is still my foreign language. It's not my mother tongue. My mother tongue is Malayalam.
Right.
And so for all Indians, any Indian who writes, English can never be a mother tongue. Even if you're from the new generation where, you learn from the KG onwards in English as a medium, still it is not your mother tongue. It's a foreign language. So there are some limitations when we write one of the languages that you write, and there is some amount of cultural, let's say, clash which comes even for selection of words.
Right.
Because when you see, because what we're talking about is that in a culture which was in India, most of our Indian religions are basically all literature Sanskrit. When you talk about Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, your main literature is Sanskrit, and all your words, meanings, everything originated from Sanskrit.
Right.
Now, if you want to take some of it out and when you're quoting it there, okay, there is some dilution when you take place, read whatever your word of meaning of Sanskrit and then put it in English. Equally, let's say when you talk about in Urdu and things like that, again you're translating to English. So there are some limitations when you write, and when you talk about serious topics, I do agree. Like when you talk about, I remember one of these aspects. There's a very small character called Sergeant Kakimo. I don't know if you recollect that. He's the Russian sergeant who's the one who's leading the attack in one part of the thing. It took me disproportionate amount of time to research and get into his shoes, even though being a man, I've met Russian defense guys and some exposure, but still, when you put a situation, then it takes a lot of time. And there are times sometimes when you empathize with some of the characters so much in their suffering that when you're writing, you find tears rolling down your cheek.
Correct.
It's a character whom you have created. It's a misery which you have written, and then you
Yes.
feel sad about it. So yes, I agree. Sometimes you do go through a lot of agony when you're writing the book,
Writing
but
it. Yes.
it does happen. It does happen, and you have to be very careful. Because if your personal belief system is so strong that you cannot write something against it, then yes, you have a challenge.
So you're saying that while you were writing this novel, you did have, times when you were wrestling with your own personality, your own personal ideas, maybe your faith, your cultural belonging. So while you were writing it, the whole process kind of changed you as well, right?
Of course, each novel is like being baptized in fire, literally. I mean, each
Yes.
novel is like kind of you go through a whole world of emotions when you're writing a novel, and you come outside, you think you're born once again. I mean,
Yes.
one of course is that you realize how much more ignorant you are with each book,
Right. I
because
can
for every
imagine.
one sentence that you write, you know that there's a million more you don't know about.
Absolutely.
So it's a humbling experience that to start with, but equally it's a literally it's like being in a way, like as you say, give birth to a child. It's something like that. You writing a book and publishing it's something like you remember all the characters, the agonies that you've gone through. It's a kind of, and it's a very private thing. Nobody can help you with that. You're
Yes.
battling your own things, and you also have another bias because I'm a defense guy, so I always would like India to win in anything that you write.
Yes.
So so even that you have to be careful because anyone who reads it will know that this guy's a ex-defense guy, so he's putting a point of view where right or wrong, India always wins. So
Well,
but there's a lot theory. You have to be careful. Initially, these biases do come in, but then you have to read, reread, and then always editor is a kind of balancer in this
correct. I'm sure,
because editor plays a big role in this, like a very big role because a
especially in a
lot of
book
the
like
times you
yours,
missed something.
especially
A lot of the times, right?
yes, in a book like yours, because you've also had experience in the defense. So I guess having an editor who had an objective perspective always could have, maybe brought a lot more clarity to the narration of your story, to the novel that you've written. I, I mean, as a follow up of what I was asking you earlier, so did your perception or your perspective of the fabric of Indian society also change, or evolve while your novel was evolving?
To some extent, yes. To some extent, but I would say that because my third novel, because I didn't have, the first book was also a lot of research has gone into it. It is about one aspect of society. I was in Himachal Pradesh, and a lot of detailed researching. It's something you may like reading. That's very far. It's a very different kind of writing,
I will definitely.
and again, it's exclusive to its own kind.
Right.
life in a hydroelectric project and its own challenges, nuances, and things like that. So in the second book was again another society and LTT in play. Third book is again terrorism and society in play. So Indian society, I would say not only Indian society, I would say society of the subcontinent, because my writing is mostly it plays out between, let's say, the subcontinent, which is what India used to be. We always lived together as a subcontinent. It is now that, and unfortunate as it may be, but we have to still learn to live together. Because physically, geographically, we are situated like that. Better that we work along. So yes, whilst I have studied the subcontinent, my understanding of the subcontinent, many aspects have changed. Many aspects, but more about Pakistan than about India.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yes.
Because in India, maybe because I've traveled extensively in India. I've
Right.
been to the north, south, east, west. I've cycled from west to east, and a lot of things I've done. So, uh, you long back I cycled from Pune to Arunachal Pradesh. We went on cycle with a group of some 7, 8 chaps. So
Wow.
we have been to, I've been in the south, north, been in Himachal, Jammu and Kashmir, Sikkim, northeast. So India kind of, it's much easier to me, but I've not been to Pakistan. A lot of my writing is research based, so it takes time to understand that society and what you write, and again try to template it. So
Yes.
when you go one step further, now you go to Iran, then you go into Russia, then it becomes that much more challenging. So yes, your understanding of the society of the subcontinent as a whole, yes, definitely. You realize that
Yes.
so many nuances play up, and when you read
Absolutely.
this kind of novel,
Right.
yeah.
So we are in the last few minutes of our conversation, but I did not want to end this without asking, maybe something about just looking ahead. Like, what do you hope a young reader, perhaps from a minority background, takes away from Amongst the Believers?
See, okay, this is the if you take the substantive part of the novel, that what it says is that we all live by a value system. The whole question is how much are you willing to stake for what you believe in,
Absolutely.
what you honestly believe in. Not I'm not talking about fake poodling or not talking about posturing. I'm telling that this whole novel is about how much are you willing to extend yourself or stretch yourself to for what you believe in. To what extent will you go to to protect the people whom you love, to do things for what you believe in. That's the gist of the whole thing. Now, irrespective of whatever else happens.
Yes.
So what this the title is? It's about it's about now the Amongst the Believers. When I wrote the title, it's primarily about those people who are stuck with the terrorists in a terrorist camp. A lot of the life
Yes.
on what happens. Now he says that there are a set of the suicide terrorists who have made up their mind to die or kill themselves for what they believe is a cause. And there are these girls and women who are stuck with them, and there's some of the other
Yes.
people who are stuck with them. And what happens in that life? That is the core of it.
Right.
But the gist of the novel is this: that what do you believe in? How much do you believe in? How much are you willing to stand by what you believe in?
And that's a beautiful, summation of this book, because I think that's what you've attempted to do, to show the strength of one's beliefs, and to be able to then figure out for yourselves, to what would make that count in a world where everything else may be against you. So what are your beliefs, and how much are you willing to give, to make it, to make those beliefs stand? So that's a, I really love the way you put it together, sir. And finally, I just also wanted to ask you, like, where do you see the role of literature in shaping empathy, especially in a time of increasing, almost polarization?
Very, 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 very important. Because see, one of the things I tell you is that, let's say, just for your information, you write a novel in 12 chapters. If someone has to make this in the movie, typically in any movie will have about 35 to 40 scenes.
Right.
Just the standard templating. So if someone is making a movie or a book, what does the he or she do? She'll take out one chapter, split into three, and then put into dialogues and action, and split that into that a movie making setup. But where do they draw the inspiration from what you've written?
Right.
So even today, so that's a thing that is coming to that. Even today, if you think that the majority of the people books as a reading as a pastime, fiction reading, true, I agree, because when I speak to the keen readers, they're very passionate about reading. They think that the OTT and etc. is a poor substitute for reading. But then they form only about let's say for them 5%. That the reading community has come down, literally come down to single digits. If there were 100 people, but I remember a time sometime back, there was a day when I used to read a novel a day. You go to the library, pick up a book and read it, return it, fiction. The next day you read another one, return it. So because those days television was what your Chitrahar and whatever that
Yes.
something used to happen, that nothing beyond that. So your reading was a place where you thought you could really explore your mind and go to places and travel and just travel with the books, whichever places, and then different kind of life. And if you get the right kind of books, you literally live another life. You get to see, and then some of them may not be pleasant, but it is very much different.
Informative and
So I
educative.
believe that
Yeah.
see, the difference is that literature in the traditional sense of only the print media by itself, its importance is definitely reduced. But finally, what comes on the screen, it also comes from the paper only. It doesn't come from the thin air.
Right.
So, India still we are behind in the sense that our people still believe in formula serials, and that script writers deciding between director will tell script writer, make a story for me, I'll make this one for you and put some masala and make it work. But as your the Indian English writing improves over a period of time, that will also they'll become the source. So definitely it plays. Literature will always play. I'm a firm believer in that. May not be in the direct sense that what we used to believe in.
Right.
It's directly the books directly influencing. Okay, they may go to the next stage. Books are influencing what is being made into serial. So there it plays up.
So I think on that note, where we are actually agreeing that literature still plays the primary role, I'm so surprised that we've already come to the end of an hour, but we here at Humanity 2.0 and those of our viewers who have joined us on this for this conversation today are so grateful to you, sir, for having given us this one explosive hour, because these are conversations that we don't usually have. This is very informative. I would again, encourage those of you who have not yet, picked up this book to go ahead and get a copy and read maybe all of Shibu sir's books, which are available on Amazon. But thank you so much for being here, sir, and for being so, making things so simple for us to understand, and yet provoke us to thought and hopefully to action as well. So, once again, thank you, viewers, for being with us. And thank you, sir. It has been an awesome pleasure to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Prashanti. Thank you so much.